So today we're going to learn a new sutta, which is found in the Samyutta Nikaya of the Pali Canon. And the name of this sutta is called Chappanaka Sutta. The name of the sutta is Chappanaka Sutta, and in English, the meaning is the simile of the 6 animals. Okay, so let me share the link with you. Okay. So our great teacher, the Supreme Buddha, teaches this sutta to monks, to bhikkhus. Okay, so when you're learning this, you should remember that and keep that in mind. This is the advice to venerable monks. Okay, so as lay devotees, you can relate this to your life and practice this Dhamma within your life, because this is a very, very practical point of Dhamma that we're going to be discussing today. It's very relevant and it really helps a person. If a person catches this and relates it to his life, then that person will definitely be able to develop one's life very quickly, or rather develop the Dhamma path very quickly, because this is where a lot of people have trouble. Okay, so the Supreme Buddha teaches, because suppose a man with limbs wounded and festering, would enter wood of thorny reeds. So a person who has wounds in his entire body would enter wood of thorny reeds. Okay. And the kusa thorns means, kusa is a type of very sharp, bladey grass. Okay, so in that forest, there's the forest is filled with these thorny grass. Okay, and the kusa thorns would prick his feet, and the reed blades would slash his limbs. Thus, that man would thereby experience even more pain and displeasure. Okay, so if a person who's wounded enters a thorny forest, and when he's walking through the forest, he's going to feel much more uncomfortable than a person who does not have thorns. Okay, so here the Supreme Buddha is saying, when he's entering the forest, he's already wounded. So that means when he enters that forest, he's going to experience much more pain than a regular person. Okay, so the Supreme Buddha teaches, so too bhikkhus, some bhikkhu here gone to the village or the forest meet someone who reproaches him thus: this venerable one, acting in this way, behaving in this way, is a foul village thorn. Okay, so the Supreme Buddha teaches, suppose a bhikkhu, when he goes into the village, he gets to hear people blaming. So when he goes into the village, he hears people blaming a certain bhikkhu about his behavior, or saying that, so when this bhikkhu has this kind of bad behavior, he behaves like this is the way he talks. So they're accusing him of wrongdoing. Okay, saying, he's behaving in a foul way, and he's a thorn to the village. He's a thorn to the village. That means, what does it mean that he's a thorn to the village? What does it mean that he is a thorn to the village? If you say, he's a thorn to our family, what does it mean? Is he a good person or a bad person? he's a bad person, right? So people in the village is saying this bhikkhu is like a thorn to the village. The Supreme Buddha teaches, having understood him thus as a thorn, one should understand restraint and unrestrained. Okay, so I know it's difficult to understand, so I will explain this. Okay, so here the Supreme Buddha teaches a person who has bad behavior. Okay, so a person who behaves, not person, a bhikkhu who is behaving in the wrong way. Okay, people in the village, when they get to know that this is the way a bhikkhu behave, then people starts to talk bad about that person. Okay, so when a good bhikkhu goes into the village and gets to hear other people accusing a certain bhikkhu of his bad character, then the Supreme Buddha teaches, then you should understand him as being a thorn. Okay, a thorn is something that you should be very careful about, right? If when you're walking, if you see a thorn, are you going to step on it, or are you going to take another route and avoid it? Right? You're going to avoid that thorn. So the Supreme Buddha teaches, when you get to hear that a certain bhikkhu is behaving in a bad way, then you should realize that he's a thorn. That means he's not a good person to associate with. And having understood that, you should understand restraint from non-restraint. Okay, so the reason that people are accusing him is because he's not restrained. So therefore, when you hear about a person's wrong behavior, you should understand how to be restrained, what restraint and non-restraint is. Okay, so now usually when we get to hear about someone who has done something wrong, what happened to our mind? Okay, when you go into a group of people, they're talking about a group. They're talking about someone who has done something wrong. So the moment you hear that, what kind of feeling do you get?
Like we feel we shouldn't talk about others. We feel that we shouldn't blame others. We shouldn't talk about others.
Yes, that's true. But if you go into a group of people and they're saying they're accusing someone of something bad that they have done. So for example, say he has engaged in sexual misconduct. So they're saying, oh, so and so has done this. So when you hear something like that, especially if that's a person you know very well, how do you feel? What happens to your mind when you hear of such a thing? That's what I'm asking. Now, suppose someone who you know very well has engaged in sexual misconduct, and when you go into your group of people and they're talking about that person, so and so has cheated on his wife like this and saying all these bad things about him. So, what happens to your mind at that time? That's what I'm asking.
Trust is broken. Other person.
Hmm?
Our trust is broken because we're hearing of that. Our trust on that person.
Trust. Okay, yeah. So usually in such a situation, what happens is we also feel our mind also becomes unrestrained, right? When we hear about another person's unrestrainment, which is, having done something wrong, then what happens to our mind is our mind also becomes unrestrained. Wow. How? Because we feel angry with that person, we feel resentful towards that person, right? So our mind also becomes unrestrained. So here the Supreme Buddha teaches, having understood that person who has done the wrong thing as a thorn, you should make sure that you know how to keep your mind restrained without making it unrestrained. That's what the Supreme Buddha is teaching here. Okay? Because if you go into such a discussion with an unrestrained mind, then when you're hearing those things, what will happen? Your mind will get even more unrestrained. I mean, that's why the Supreme Buddha teaches, if a person goes into a thorny village already with wounds, then he's going to feel much worse than he already is. Right? So if a person goes out with already an unrestrained mind, then when he hears such things, his mind becomes even more unrestrained. And in this sutta, the Supreme Buddha teaches how to keep our mind restrained and what non-restraint is. Okay? So the Supreme Buddha teaches, and how bhikkhus is their non-restraint. Non-restraint means Indriya asangvara. Asangvara means non-restraint. It's not control. It's not control. It's not restraint. Okay, so let's see what it means to be non-restrained. So the Supreme Buddha teaches, having seen a form with the eye, a bhikkhu is intent upon a pleasing form and repelled by a displeasing form. So what is non-restraint? When you see something, when you see a form with the eye, when you see a pleasing form, when you see a pleasing form meaning something that you really like, something that you really enjoy. So when you see a pleasing form, what happens is your mind feels lust or desire or attachment towards it. So once that happens, what happens to the mind is the mind becomes non-restrained. Or if you see a displeasing form, what does it mean to see a displeasing form? What are things displeasing to you? Something that you don't like, right? So if you see something that you don't like, then what happens is you feel repelled by. That means you feel resentful and angry towards that. So suppose you see someone who you really don't like to see. It could be one of your it could be someone who really bothers you or says bad things about you, who you really never get along. Okay, it could be your relatives who you don't get along with. So when you see that person, what happens to your mind? It becomes repelled by that person. So that means your mind has become unrestrained. Okay, so now tell me, in your everyday life, is your mind mostly restrained or non-restrained?
Many times non-restraint only.
Hmm?
Many times it is non-restraint only.
Yeah, most of the time for many people, right? Your mind is non-restrained because for the ordinary mind, when a person sees something, either he feels very attracted and attached to that thing, or if you see someone who you don't like, who you don't want to see, then you feel repelled and resentful towards that person. So that means our mind has become unrestrained. Okay, so the Supreme Buddha teaches he dwells without having set up mindfulness of the body with limited mind, and he does not understand it as it really is, the liberation of mind, liberation of wisdom, wherein those evil, unwholesome states cease without remainder. That means he does not know how to think wisely and abandon those defilements from arising. Because that's the reason that people become non-restrained. Once a person's the story with the teachers, all our six sense faculties can become non-restrained at any moment. Through our eyes, when we see something, when we hear something, when we smell something, when we taste something, when we feel something, or when we think something that's very enticing, desirous, then what happens is there arises lust within. Okay, and then you search for it, you go after it, you can't live without it. So what does that mean? That your mind has become non-restrained. Or when you see something you don't like, or if you hear something you don't like, or you smell something you don't like, you taste something you don't like, or you feel something, a sensation that you don't like, then you quickly become resentful towards it. And again, your mind has become non-restrained. It is not in control. Okay, so this is what the teaches. If a person doesn't know how to control this state of mind, if a person does not know how to control this and how to establish his mind on a wholesome thought, then that person's life, his entire life, is non-restrained. Okay. So having in the same way, so this is the same principle for all the six sense faculties, right? So if you hear someone, if you hear someone praising you, someone comes to you and is praising you, and saying how good you are, then what happens to your mind? Your mind quickly become overcome by that praise, and you feel extremely happy, and you're just overwhelmed by happiness and joy, right? So why? Because you desire praise, you like praise, you're attached to that praise. Okay, so when that happens, your mind becomes non-restrained. And then someone comes and blames you. Then what happens? You become angry, you become resentful, right? And you become upset. So again, what happened to your mind is your ear became non-restrained. So in this way, throughout our day, our sense faculties most of the time are not restrained. Do you agree with that? Right? So the Supreme Buddha always advised that one should always keep one's sense faculties restrained, controlled. Okay, so now these days it's very difficult to keep your mind controlled. Okay, one way to keep your mind controlled is by not looking at things that makes your mind aroused with defilements. Okay? If a person has the ability to stop himself from seeing things that he knows will arouse lust within his mind, then he has sense control. He has restraint within him. But these days, many people don't have this control. When they start to see something that arouse lust within, then they go on again and again and again, watching that. Why? Because that person's eye is non-restrained. Okay, but if a person realizes that this is not a good thing, okay, having my eyes non-restrained is not a good thing, and knowing the reason that it becomes non-restrained, if he can stop himself, that takes a certain level of effort. It takes a certain level of determination not to look at such things, right? But if a person can stop himself from looking at things that arouse arouse lust within him, then he's making an effort to control his eyes. That's what restraint is. It's not something that's going to come to you automatically. It's something that you have to practice with much effort and determination. Okay? And at the same time, so because I mean, these days people are addicted to phones. Why is that? Because they don't have this restraint. Right? Sometimes, you know, they think, okay, I won't look at bad things, and you know, you try to control, but it's only there for like 5 minutes or maybe 10 minutes, and then again the phone is in the hand. Why is that? Because that person does not have enough effort and determination to control his eyes. Okay, so for that you need to make different tactics. You know, that's why some people hide their phone so that they. So it's not really the is it the phone? Is it the phone's fault, or is it your fault that you're watching things that make your mind aroused with defilements? Is it the phone's fault? No, you can't blame the phone, right? It's your fault. So it's in your hands because you know you're the one who uses the phone to make your mind become unrestrained, right? So if a person can use many tactics to control the mind. One thing is you can simply, if a person is addicted to things like that, you can completely get rid of the phone. If you can't control it, then the only way one way to start off is pretty much, you know, don't use such phone, then just use a little phone just to make calls. So that's the external guard that you can take. Okay, and little by little you can practice and increase your determination and effort and try to control your eyes. Okay, whenever you feel like watching something bad, you can change the environment, go somewhere, go to the park or go to a museum and change. You know, you can change your situation so that you won't do such things. So in that way, you can do many things to control your eyes. Okay, in the same way, to control your ears. If you know that if you know that when you go somewhere, what you hear is going to arouse anger within you or desire within you, don't go there. That's one way to control yourself. Okay. Um, However, suppose you have to go there, because then you have to develop your mind such that even if you hear those things, you're able to keep your mind tamed without letting your mind become filled with defilements. So that's why the Subhramita teaches similarly to this. It's like this. Suppose you're going on a paddy. So suppose um, a cow is going on a paddy field. Okay, so there's a person who takes care of the cow, and he is taking the cow on the paddy field. And when he's going on the paddy field, what he tries to do is he always tries to eat the rice kernels on either side, right? That's his nature. So what does the owner has to do? He has to tie him with a rope and make sure that he does not eat, you know, hold him tight and make sure that he does not eat the rice kernels on either side. So the owner has to take control. So in the same way, the Supreme Buddha teaches we should make mindfulness the owner of our mind. If there's mindfulness within our mind, then we can keep the mind controlled. Okay, so the Supreme Buddha teaches a beautiful simile. Okay, suppose because a man would catch 6 animals with different domains and different feeding grounds, okay, and tie them by a strong rope. So a man would catch 6 different animals, and he would tie all 6 together. Okay. He would catch a snake, a crocodile, a bird, a dog, a jackal, and a monkey, and tie each by a strong rope. Having done so, he would tie the ropes together with a knot in the middle and release them. Okay? So he catches those 6 animals and he ties all 6 animals by ropes and tie all of those 6 ropes together. Okay? Then those 6 animals with different domains and different feeding grounds would each pull in the direction of its own feeding ground and domain. Okay, so the snake would pull one way, thinking, let me enter an anthill. The crocodile would pull another way, thinking, let me enter the water. The bird would pull another way, thinking, let me fly up into the sky. And the dog would pull another way, thinking, let me enter a village. And the jackal would pull another way, thinking, let me enter a charnel ground. So the 6 animals are pulling to the direction that they want to go. Okay. The monkey would pull another way, thinking, let me enter a forest. Now, when these 6 animals become worn out and fatigued, they would be dominated by the one among them that was strongest. They would submit to it and come under its control. Okay, so when these 6 animals are tied together, what they do is each of them try to run to the place that they want to go. Okay, and this will be with the teachers. So they're trying to go and go and go, and then with time, what happens is they get exhausted and tired. And when that happens, what happens is whoever is the strongest is the one who's able to at least go a little bit of distance to the direction that he wants to go. Okay. So too bhikkhus, when a bhikkhu has not developed and cultivated mindfulness directed to the body, mindfulness directed towards the body means kayanupassana. In the same way, if a bhikkhu has not developed kayanupassana, mindfulness directed towards the body, the eye pulls in the direction of agreeable forms and disagreeable forms are repulsive. Okay. The ear pulls in the direction of agreeable sounds and disagreeable sounds are repulsive. The nose pulls in the direction of agreeable odors and disagreeable odors are repulsive. The tongue pulls in the direction of agreeable tastes and disagreeable tastes are repulsive. And the body pulls in the direction of agreeable tactile objects and disagreeable tactile objects are considered repulsive. And the mind pulls in the direction of agreeable mental thoughts and disagreeable mental thoughts are repulsive. Okay, so this will be with the teachers. If a person does not have mindfulness directed towards the body, what happens is the eye is pulled towards beautiful forms. The ear pulls you towards beautiful sounds. The nose pulls you towards nice smells. And in this way, your sense faculties makes you directed or pulled towards beautiful forms, sounds, smells, tastes, and bodily sensations and thoughts. Okay, and then if it's repulsive, if that objective is repulsive, then you feel resentful and angry towards it. Okay, why does that happen? If a person does not have mindfulness towards the body. It is in such a way that there is none restraint. So the reason then that there is none restraint, the reason that our sense faculties become non-restrained is because a person does not practice kayanupassana, mindfulness towards the body. So what is kayanupassana? Kayanupassana means being mindful about the reality of this body. In the Kayanupassana section, the Supreme Buddha teaches, look at this body as being foul. This body is filled with foul things. So if a person contemplates like this, then that person does not become strongly attached to things, nor is he repulsed by it. He can stay very neutral. He can keep his mind controlled. Okay. And then the Supreme Buddha teaches, look at this body in terms of elements, that this body is made of the earth, Patavi Dhatu, earth element, Apo Dhatu, water element, Tejo Dhatu, the heat element, and Vayu Dhatu, the air element. This body consists of these four elements. There's nothing to call me, mine, or I here. So when a person understands its reality, then that person is able to keep his mind controlled without letting his sense faculties become unrestrained. Okay. And how bhikkhus is their restraint? So now the teaches what restraint is. Here, having seen a form with the eye, a bhikkhu is not intent upon a pleasing form and not repelled by a displeasing form. So if a person practices Kayanupassana, then when he sees a pleasing form, he does not become desirous or attached to it. And when he sees a displeasing form, he does not become repulsed by it. He's very neutral. His mind is controlled through his ears, so through his eyes, ears, nose, tongue, and the body and the mind. Okay, so for example, when he's praised, he does not become attached to that praise. And when he's being blamed, he does not fall apart. He's able to keep his mind controlled. This is a result of practicing Kayanupassana. So if you all also want to keep your mind restrained at all times, then what you should practice is, this Kayanupassana, always trying to look at this body in terms of its reality. Okay. Another meditation that's under the Kayanupassana is the meditation on charnel ground. That is looking at the body, looking at the nature of a corpse. Once a person dies, how little by little that body decays and disappears. It's called Navasivatika. So if a person understands the reality of this body, then what happens really is he does not become attached to this body, not just to his body, but also to others' bodies. And with that understanding, he realizes there is absolutely nothing to call me, nothing to call mine, nothing to call myself here. And with that understanding, he's able to keep his six sense faculties controlled. That is the way. So this is remember the teachers. He dwells having set up mindfulness of the body with a measureless mind, and he understands as it really is the liberation of mind, liberation by wisdom, wherein those evil, unwholesome states cease without remainder. So he knows the way to abandon and keep his mind free from defilements. So that takes wisdom. Being able to look at the reality of this body means you're looking with wisdom. Okay, and when you look at the reality of the body, when you see things with wisdom, then you are able to keep your mind controlled. That's what the Supreme Buddha is teaching here. Okay, and in the same way, the Supreme Buddha teaches for all six sense faculties. And the Supreme Buddha teaches the same simile. So suppose a man would catch six animals with different domains and tie them by a strong rope. So he would catch a snake, a crocodile, a bird, a dog, a jackal, and a monkey, and he tie each one with a strong rope. And then, having done so, he binds each of those strong ropes to a pillar. Understand? So there's a strong pillar in the middle, and he goes and he catches those six animals and he ties each of them by a rope, and he ties each of those ropes into the pillar. Okay, so now When these 6 animals, when they're tied, what they do is each of them tries to pull themselves in the direction that they want to go. But can they go? They try to pull and push themselves towards the monkey wants to go to the forest, the dog wants to go to the village, and they try as much as they can to go. But can they go? No. Why? Because they're tied strongly to the pillar. Now, when these 6 animals become worn out and fatigued, they would stand close to that post or pillar. They would sit down there. They would lie down there. So after they try as much as they can to go, when they realize that they can't, when they're exhausted, they would just sit down and stay next to the pillar. Okay, so to bhikkhus, when a bhikkhu has developed and cultivated mindfulness directed to the body, kaya anupassana, the eye does not pull in the direction of agreeable forms. Understand? So previously, when those 6 animals were caught and when they were tied to each other, what happened is whoever was the strongest would, pull all the 6 animals to the direction that he wants to go. However, when these 6 animals are tied to the pole, none of them can go to the place they want. They have to stay at the pole. The Supreme Buddha teaches this kaya anupassana is like the pole. It's what controls the mind. It's what controls the 6 sense faculties. If you practice the kaya anupassana, then your eye would not run towards pleasing forms, and your eye would not become repulsed by displeasing forms. Your ear would not run towards pleasing sounds, and your ear would not become repelled by repulsive sounds. And your nose would not run towards nice smells. And you will not feel repulsed by displeasing smells in the same way for the 6 sense faculties. Okay. It is in such a way that there is restraint. So this is the way to restrain. So if a person wants to control his 6 sense faculties, then what should he do? He should practice kaya anupassana. That is the only way. So if you're someone who always, become repelled by external things, by things you see, by things you hear, by things you smell, the things you taste, if you're always repelled by external objects, or if you become very attached and desirous towards external things, then if you want to control your mind from it, then the thing to practice is kaya anupassana, looking at the reality of this body. The Supreme Buddha teaches a strong post or pillar bhikkhus. This bhikkhus is a designation for mindfulness directed to the body. Therefore, bhikkhus, you should train yourselves thus. We will develop and cultivate mindfulness directed to the body. Mikita Vyakal. Mikita Vyakal means practice it so well. If you have vehicle at home, at any time you can get into it and go to the place you want, right? Like that, make kaya anupassana your vehicle. So at any time you can dive into the kaya anupassana quickly, and that will help you to abandon defilements. Make it our basis. Stabilize it and exercise ourselves in it and fully perfect it. This should you train yourself. So that is the advice of the Supreme Buddha. So if a person controls his sense faculties, then that person did so by trying to understand the reality of this body. Okay, so bhikkhus, practice this Kayanupassana. Kayanupassana is a very powerful meditation. If a person practices Kayanupassana, then that person is able to restrain one's sense faculties and is able to understand the reality of this life and is able to escape from all suffering. Okay. So, so I thought I should share this sutta with you because this is a problem that many people face in today's present society, not being able to restrain one's senses. That is why there's so much misconduct in this world, because a person does not have the ability to control his eyes. That's why there's so much sexual misconduct in this world, because their people are not able to control their eyes, their ears, their nose, the tongue, and the body. And there's so many there are things like wars, and there are things like there's so much crime in this world because quickly people become repulsed and repelled by external things, and therefore they end up killing and stabbing, right? People are not able to control their mind, their eyes, the ear, the nose, the tongue, the body, and the mind. So one of the things that you first need to develop is having shame and fear of unwholesome things. If a person has shame of having unwholesome things in his mind or doing unwholesome things, and if a person has moral fear of doing unwholesome things, then that is the start. And with that, a person can develop and restraining his six sense faculties. Okay, so during the Buddha's time, Arahan Nanda was the foremost bhikkhu among bhikkhus who had restrained sense faculties. It said that when Arahan Nanda looks at a certain direction, he never lets his mind becomes overcome by desire or repulsiveness or resentfulness. He is able to well control his mind. Okay, so the Supreme Buddha teaches if a person can develop this mindfulness, then that person can spend his entire day without letting defilements roam into his mind. And therefore, when he sits down to practice a meditation, he can easily calm his mind. He can easily concentrate his mind, and he can easily develop his Dhammapada. That's why the Supreme Buddha teaches that Indriya Samvara, or restraining of the six sense faculties, is one of the preliminary things that a person should develop in order to advance in the Dhammapada. Because without restraining your senses, really you can't even protect the precepts. Okay, so even to protect the precepts, you need the restraining of the six sense faculties to a certain degree. Okay, and then you can develop this little by little, where when you hear anything, when you see anything that you don't like, you don't let your mind become overcome by anger. And when you see very pleasing things, when you hear pleasing things, you don't let those things control your mind. So that's a very high level of restrainment. Okay. So may this beautiful sutta help all of us to develop restraint within our lives. May we be able to control our ears, our eyes, our ears, the nose, the tongue, the body, and the mind. And may this sutta help all of us to develop our Dhammapada and escape from all suffering in this Gautam Buddha's dispensation. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.